They say weddings reveal the true colors of people, not just the bride and groom, but everyone who comes dressed in borrowed smiles and hidden truths, and on that glowing summer evening, beneath chandeliers strung with fairy lights inside a rustic countryside barn, I learned more about my own worth than I ever did during the years I spent in quiet sacrifice. My name is Alina, and I was never supposed to be a part of the spectacle, just a polite guest at Daniel's cousin's wedding, holding our 2-year-old son Noah in my arms, trying to blend into the backdrop of joy that belonged to others. I hadn't seen Daniel in over a year, not since he walked out on us saying he couldn't find himself in fatherhood, and though the invitation arrived addressed to both of us, I came out of respect, for the family, for closure, maybe even for the part of me that still hoped he'd one day see the woman behind the struggle. As I sat quietly at the edge of the celebration, feeding Noah mashed potatoes and adjusting the soft wrap on my shoulder, I heard his voice, not directed at me but loud enough to slice through my composure like a blade. "Yeah, Alina's here. Just the baby carrier tonight, I guess," he joked to a circle of laughing cousins, and I felt my breath hitch, my cheeks burn, and my dignity shrink under the weight of that careless, brutal dismissal. I wasn't just a vessel who bore a child, I was the woman who stayed when he had no gigs, who paid the rent when he couldn't hold a job, who comforted him during panic attacks, who clapped the loudest at his failed shows, and who still believed in him when even he didn't. Yet here I was, reduced to a utility, a throwaway line in a man's tale of escape. The rage wasn't loud, it was quiet, deep, ancestral, passed down from mothers who'd been forgotten, from women who'd swallowed pain and stood up anyway. When the DJ invited guests to give a toast, people laughed and nudged one another, and something in me, maybe anger, maybe love for my child, maybe the dignity I thought I'd lost, lifted me to my feet and walked me toward the microphone with Noah still asleep on my chest. The barn hushed, glasses stopped clinking, Daniel's smirk faltered, and I spoke not just for me but for every mother who had ever been dismissed. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but someone called me, just a baby carrier, and I think it's time we talk about what that really means. I carried more than a baby, I carried this man through years of failure and self-doubt, carried our groceries when he forgot, our dreams when he gave up, our future when he didn't want one. I carried the weight of being enough and not being seen. I carried our son through morning sickness, postpartum, and long nights of colic, and I carry him now, not because I have to, but because love doesn't quit, even when someone else does. So no, I'm not just a baby carrier. I was his partner, his peace, his foundation. And I deserve to be seen as more than a function. A hush followed, then a single clap, then many, not out of politeness but resonance, and as I stepped away, the bride herself hugged me, teary-eyed, whispering, "Thank you for saying what so many of us feel," and later, a grandmother held my hand and said, "You reminded me of my daughter. She raised 5 kids alone and no one ever saw her." Daniel didn't speak to me that night, but weeks later I got a letter, not begging for another chance, but finally recognizing the silence he'd left me in. "You were never just anything. I'm sorry it took me so long to see you." I didn't write back, not out of anger, but because my healing no longer depended on his realization. I found work at a nonprofit helping single mothers tell their stories. I shared mine at fundraisers, workshops, shelters. I spoke not to be heard, but to help others hear themselves, and the more I spoke, the more I remembered who I was before I was anyone's anything. Now, when Noah, 5 years old and full of questions, asks me why people sometimes say mean things, I tell him, because sometimes they forget how powerful love really is. But we don't. And every time he hugs me and says, "You're my best person, Mommy," I know I was never just a baby carrier. I was the bridge between brokenness and beauty, the keeper of light when others turned away, the truth in a world too quick to forget the women who carry it